Choosing the right senior living arrangement for you or your loved one can feel overwhelming. Most communities fall within two different categories, and that is buying communities and rental communities. But how do you decide which is the best fit for you and or your family member? Stick around in this video as I talk about the pros and cons and the 4 key considerations to help guide your decision. Hi, my name's Andy Algreen. I'm a realtor in Des Moines, Iowa, and I help families navigate their senior living options with confidence. So the first one that we're going to start with are the buying communities. Buying communities are typically referred to as CCRC communities, which are continuing care retirement communities. And with those, you're typically going to have a initial significant upfront payment cost, which is, and since we're in Des Moines, Iowa, the cost from all the facilities that I've toured is anywhere from $150,000 to $1 million plus. So that's kind of, there's a wide range in central Des Moines, Iowa, and kind of what the initial cost would look like. And then in addition to that initial cost, you'll have a monthly service fee. So that initial upfront cost essentially secures your residency. So if you start in independent living, and then you can move to assisted living, and then if your health then it gets worse, you can move into long-term care, and then if you're starting to need some memory care assistance, you can also kind of move into that. So essentially the top 3 pros to the buying community is the comprehensive care. You get all the way from independent living to long-term care, and you essentially get top priority inside of these communities. So if you need to move from independent living to assisted living, or from independent living straight to long-term care, or whatever that kind of looks like, you would get first dibs on moving. And like if you're already living inside of the community, you wouldn't have someone that's already living outside of, like, not living there come in and have first pick. So since you're already living in the facility, have made that cost, then you would have first dibs on that. Second pro to the buying community is the predictability and cost. Typically, from what I've seen in central Des Moines, you're going to have anywhere from 3% to 5% increase in that monthly service fee, and that's pretty common and standard from what I've seen. Third pro that I found inside of the buying communities is that you really have a stable community of people that have been there a while for the most part, as far as the workers and the staff, and majority of those people are not contracted out. Majority of those people in the CCRC communities are employees for that facility and aren't contracted out. So they've been there a while, and you just get to build a relationship with those people there. So now kind of to go into the cons of this type of community, we'll go into the first one, which is obviously the first thing that most people are looking at is the cost. And obviously you're going to have a higher upfront cost in this type of facility, which might limit the availability on the people that can get inside of these facilities. Number 2 could be the contracts inside of these communities, kind of just figuring out what exactly the terms are. If you need to, I would recommend going to an attorney just to review the contract and just so you know everything that's inside of it. One thing inside of most of the communities have is somewhere that states after the person vacates the property, either passes away or leaves for whatever reason, then you get typically 80 to 90% of that initial upfront cost back inside of the contract, and making sure that you know everything that's inside of it. It's typically a little bit longer contract compared to the monthly rental communities. The third con for this one is the significant commitment that most people would have to make to live inside of the buying community. Just with the upfront cost, kind of goes back to con number 1, but it's just a big financial commitment on some people's parts. Now going into the monthly rental communities, essentially these operate the same way as a standard lease agreement. So basically you pay monthly rent without that upfront fee when compared to the buying community. Services like housekeeping, meals, and amenities are often included inside of the monthly rental communities. Typically you do not get the standard of care like the CCRC communities. First pro to this is the flexibility within this type of lease agreement. You just have a lot more flexibility compared to the buying community. Number 2 is that you do not have that initial upfront cost, so it's a lot easier to get inside of these communities. The third pro on this one is just much more simpler lease agreement when compared to the buying community. So now looking at the cost of the monthly rental communities, the first one that I always look at is the variable costs. So inside of these communities, typically the care services are billed separately. The cost of these services could change dramatically. It just leads to more unpredictability as far as the cost of care if something were to happen. Looking at the second con inside of these communities, kind of like I stated before, these communities do not have a continuum of care, so it's a little bit trickier and a little bit harder to move from independent living to assisted living, from assisted living to long-term care or memory care, if that's something that you would want or need to do. The third con that I thought of inside of this community would be the potential for rent increases, which you can kind of look at that as the same thing as the buying community, in my opinion, but I think you could see the rental prices being changed a little bit more often, and there would be a little bit less predictability in how much they would change. So when you take into consideration the pros and the cons of both of these different living facilities and communities, there are basically, from my perspective, I think there are 4 different key things to kind of take into account. Number one, in my opinion, and what most people are thinking about, is the cost. So can you afford that upfront initial cost, or would you rather prefer those smaller monthly payments and not have to, have that initial upfront cost? Number 2 is thinking about your healthcare needs and just asking the question, do I want my loved one to have that continuum of care? So it's a little bit more easier to transfer them from independent living to assisted living, and so on. And that obviously comes with a cost. Number 3 is your lifestyle preferences. I say this because most of the CCRC communities have, I would just say, more like upscale amenities and things like that. You have that upfront cost, and with that cost comes, just amenities that you are able to use. So depending on what type of lifestyle you want, if you don't need a lot of amenities and you don't really want those things, then maybe the monthly rental option or community is the way you want to go. But if you do want them, you can go that way as well. Number 4 that I thought of is the contract details. You just want to make sure you carefully review the terms, especially around the refund policy, the care services that are provided, and the potential fee increases. Thinking through these considerations and just asking these questions just to start thinking might help in the future with your decision on kind of which area you are thinking about going, whether that's a buying community or a monthly rental community. And honestly, it just helps align yourself, whether you're the senior that's moving into the community or you're the adult caregiver for that senior. It just helps align everybody and helps get everybody on the same page. Obviously, both options have their pros and have their cons, but the right choice for yourself or for your family member, if you're looking for a loved one, comes down to number 1, your financial situation, number 2, your healthcare needs, and number 3, your lifestyle preferences. If you found this video helpful, feel free to give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more senior living tips.